have no mic on and I've got juice from a nectarine all over me, but I wasn't expecting to have to film right this moment. But it is the 23rd of July. And again, 23rd of July, and that is our very first ripe tomatoes. About a month-ish, maybe a tiny bit more later than any other year. Leafy schwa. I'm going to take these indoors now. Pruners are out for a really important purpose. In the 12 years that I've been in this garden, I've never had such a sucky year for tomatoes. Now, yes, we've had our first ripe tomato. In fact, we have now had 4 ripe tomatoes, but it's the end of July. It's been awful. And thing is, it's kind of a good thing in YouTube terms, because it's going to let me explain something to you guys that I have been struggling to explain for years. And it's the whole thing about how we're all in different situations. So I need to do some major pruning to help ripen my tomatoes and my peppers, although the peppers are doing way better. So I'm going to talk to you while I get all that kind of stuff done. Now, tell you what, it's gorgeous, which is part of the issue. Let's start outdoors. Now, not everyone joins us at the same point. For some of you guys, this might be the very first time you've joined us in my garden. For others, you've been here for years and years and years. But for everyone, let me just do a reminder of, I'm Eli, and welcome to my garden in East Lothian, the central belt of Scotland. Now, this year has been a bit rubbish for just about everyone in one way or the other. Some of us, it's been the cold, others it's been sweltering heat. Folk have got wildfires, storms. I think everyone's having some sort of challenge. So I'm going to talk about mine, because it is generally a short summer here in Scotland. It is much, much colder during the summer than people think, although definitely the last maybe 5 to 10 years, it's changed a lot. We're seeing more of the warmer days, sort of above 22, 23 C. Not a lot, but we're definitely seeing more of them. But we're also seeing a lot colder nights and a lot more cold, wet days. It all affects your growing season. Now, tomatoes is what I want to talk about, because there is a way of growing tomatoes that is kind of the traditional old school way of doing it in the UK in order to combat our short summers and colder days. It gets done less and less now because a lot of current growers have learned from YouTube, and therefore they're learning from the amazing worldwide audience we have. But it does mean there are some challenges you face. So I'm going to talk about those challenges, and particularly I'm going to speak about this year, but I'm going to show you the traditional UK way of dealing with the short summers and trying to get the best tomato harvest you can. Now, I've got tomatoes grown in my greenhouse, which is the best way to grow them in Scotland to combat our super cooler short summers. But I've also got tomatoes grown in the raised bed outdoors, and I've got some of these green stalks and I've got tomatoes grown in there as well. So technically that's outdoors, but it's all different varieties for different reasons. So I'm going to start in the raised bed. The raised bed tomatoes then, there's 4 plants here. although I've been growing tomatoes in this garden for the last 12 years, so I've got a really good idea of expectations, this is only the second year I've grown indeterminate plants in this raised bed, because it is difficult to grow tomatoes outdoors in Scotland. It's not impossible, but you have to have a few thoughts and plans to make it work. Last year we had a stunning June, absolutely roasting hot from the start, and last year I had an immense crop of tomatoes from the plants that were in this bed outdoors. It was brought short in sort of mid to late August with blight, unfortunately, but up until that point they were doing fantastic, almost as well as the tomatoes in the greenhouse. This year, however, is the complete opposite, but not just outdoors, the ones in the greenhouse as well. That was the first ripe tomato I got just last week, so the end of July. Very unusual for us. Normally we've got a ripe tomato by the end of June. I have to be honest, I don't even have a lot of tomatoes in comparison to other years. Now the outdoor ones are the worst, so what I've got to do now is make that decision. That's the traditional thing we do in the UK, and it is about pruning, because, come down with me as I do this and I'll explain. It's going to seem quite harsh to some of you. Those of you who grow in warmer climes than Scotland, this is going to be quite shocking and quite harsh, but obviously we have to garden, we have to do things in a way that makes it work in our climate, which is why this is what happens. Now it's quite a tight angle in here for filming, so I'm doing my best, but the thing here is it's all about getting the tomatoes to set fruit and then getting that fruit to ripen. Those are the two difficulties for us, because the early part of summer for us is still quite cold, apart from last year, and the mid to later part of summer is not the perfect temperatures for outdoor tomato growing, hence why we usually grow them in a greenhouse. So the problem is to get that fruit to set when it's cold, and then it's getting the fruit to size and to ripen later in the summer when, again, it's getting colder. So here in the UK, the traditional method of doing this has been, with your outdoor tomatoes, you restrict the amount of fruit you're growing on them so that the plant can focus on getting that fruit to size and getting it ripe. So outdoors, it tends to be to 4 or maybe 5 trusses, depending on the plant and the type of fruit and its growing season. So I've got black Krim here, which are the larger, almost beefsteak type varieties. And you can see here, in a normal year, I would be restricting this to 4 trusses. But as you can see, I've not even got 1 full truss on this plant. It has just been so cold. The nights up until a week ago have been below 10 Celsius, which is below the temperature that tomatoes like for growing, so it stunts them. Even though we've had days which were really warm, we've had days and some days at 20 Celsius and just a bit above, today's to be 23. The nights are still very cool, and last night was only 13 Celsius. This is how it's been for us this year. It's just one of those things. So I don't have 4 trusses of tomatoes growing. So let's be honest, given it is now the end of July, my growing season probably ends at the best mid-September. Chances of me getting a truss of beefsteak tomatoes to size and ripened are slim. In fact, getting them to size are slim. So normally we would be topping the plant, pruning the top off the plant, 4 to 5 trusses. I've got this 1 truss, and I've got some flowers that have set, but I don't have tomatoes on them yet. Now the other thing we do here is we prune to the first truss. It frees up the bottom of the plant, lets airflow. You get less problems with pests and disease. But what you're also doing is you're letting the light in, the sunlight in onto that fruit to try and encourage it to ripen. Now obviously it goes without saying, these are indeterminates. So I have been taking off any suckers or side shoots that grow. You don't want them. There we go. It's the best I'm going to get. Might be a bit easier to show you on this one. As you can see here, these are cherry tomatoes. Now, these are sun gold, I'm pretty certain. And the reason I say pretty certain, is because I was certain we had 2 black Krim at the ends, sun gold and a sweet million in the middle here. However, this has turned out to be another beefsteak tomato, so clearly labels got mixed up, but I'm pretty certain this is sun gold. So you can see there I've got a truss of fruit here, I've got a truss of fruit here, a truss of fruit just forming here. Now, this would be my 4th that I would prune down to. Question is, can the plant produce these tomatoes, get them to size and ripen them in a month? So it may be that I actually take it to 3 trusses this year and just accept this year. But as always, I'm going to tidy up all of the leaves that are down here. It's one of those things, when I was a new gardener, I always thought this looked really scary. It's like, why would you cut all those leaves off? The plant needs those leaves to photosynthesize, which is true. But at this stage, we're almost at the end of the plant's life. So what we're doing now is we're telling it what to focus on. And a plant that's under stress tends to try to ripen or flower as quickly and as well as possible. So that's what we're kind of encouraging. So this one then. So again, some form of beefsteak, most likely black Krim. And there's a truss here, much smaller truss here, an even smaller one here, and that is it. Now the chances are, I'll be honest, these have no chance of growing to size and ripening. These, maybe. So we're going to let the light in. As best we can. And you're basically taking off the leaves that are shielding the fruit from the sun in the hope that it then helps them to ripen faster. And it looks really brutal, and I do know that, but it's not nearly as brutal as what I'm going to do next. This plant, which is the one that I think is also a black Krim, has no fruit on it at all. End of July and there is no fruit at all on this plant. Realistically, there is no hope this will be able to produce fruit this year. So there is no point in me tending to this plant, it taking water and nutrients from these plants. So I'm afraid, guys, it's got to go. I've just got to be realistic. It's harsh, it is. But you've got to grow for your garden, for your climate, your season. Right, we are in the greenhouse. Normally, my greenhouse would be resplendent with gorgeous colours of tomatoes by this point. This year, it's doing better than outdoors. Well, it's doing better than the raised bed indeterminates, because these are indeterminates. However, it is nowhere near as good as I would expect for this time of year. I have a lot more tomatoes on these plants than outdoors. However, only the one, the Luffy Schwa, has actually given me ripe fruit. And as I said, it's given me, I think, 3 or 4. The others, although I've got tomatoes on them, were nowhere near ripe fruit. So again, I don't know how it's going to be. I'm not going to take risks. I'm going to do the same pruning method. So I'm going to top these plants, and I'm going to take a lot of the foliage off that's covering the tomatoes. Again, folks, this isn't something you do early in the year. This is what we do when it's coming to the end of your growing season. It may not be right for you, so don't just copy me. But if your growing season is as short as ours, if your summers are as cold as ours, this is maybe an idea. Right, I'm going to start here because it's very difficult for me to show you in here because it's quite small. I have got an orange oxheart here. It is a beefsteak style tomato. I've got 1 truss of fruit here. Not all of them, in fact none of them are to size yet, and they're very pale. I've got another truss here that's got 2 fruit on it, and I've got 1 tomato here on the entire plant, which is now growing up the roof. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off a lot of the foliage here. Now this is an heirloom variety, and anyone who grows heirlooms knows they always look horrible and pathetic. So don't worry, you're going to see an awful lot of leaf curl and discoloured leaves on my plants. Don't worry about it, they're just heirlooms are absolute little drama monkeys. It's just how it goes. So I'm going to start at the bottom. It lets you see these really awful looking leaves. There's another one there, so I'm going to take that. There we go. And because I'm in the greenhouse, I'm also conscious of where the light comes from at what points in the day. So I have to think about that when I'm pruning, because the purpose of this is to get the sunlight in. I'm going to leave the leaves that are up here, but I am going to top the plant because anything that's up here is not going to give me fruit. And again, when you're doing this, just be really careful, because I'm not the first and I won't be the last person who has chopped off a branch and discovered that's the one that has the tomatoes on it. Okay, that's 1 plant done. This plant is driving me insane because it's so messy and it touches me every time I come in. Now, big massive truss here. This is my Marmande. Marmande are reliable for us. We love them. They're our go-to beefsteaks in the greenhouse. I have got a huge truss of fruit there. Some of it is almost the size, not all of it, and it's quite green. I've got a truss here that's got some smaller fruit on it. I've got one here sitting on this shelf that's got fruit on it. Again, not some of it's coming up to size. Going up the plant, I've got 1 tiny little fruit here that's probably not going to do anything. First thing I'm going to do then, I'm going to cut to above this little plant, because other than that it's not really going to be much use to me. Now I've got string here, so I'll undo this. Bye. And I'll just re-support this plant. Right. Now I can see there's a sucker there, so that's off. Any suckers you find, take them off because they're of no use whatsoever. They're just going to take energy from the plant. Come on, suckers! Kate is outdoors if you can hear the comments. So again, all the foliage at the bottom to let the light in to that first truss. There we go. That's better. So now you can see the tomatoes, which means the sunlight can get to them. Now as we go up, I'm just going to check any more suckers. Nope, we are good. Now again, look at the bare plants. It is shocking to see this, but again, this is the end of our growing season. So it's not something you would do earlier on. This is an end of the season, last resort. Now, the next plant is where it's going to get really difficult. It's a Barry's Crazy Cherry. And I don't know if I can even show you this because it is just crazy. Thank you. Okay, I've had to ask Kate to come and be camera lady for me because it's just a nightmare to film in here. But you'll see again, lots of curly, discoloured leaves. It's not an issue. As you go up, you can see it's normal, healthy leaves. But the thing with Barry's Crazy Cherry, apart from that, is totally crazy. Massive, massive trusses of fruit. Look, one truss of tomatoes there. There's another one there. Okay, so this is standard and they just get bigger as the plant gets older. They're all the way up. Now try and think about this. If I'm saying it's the end of our season, these probably, yeah, we'll get these to ripen, but all of these little flowers that don't even have fruit on them yet, you've got to think about, is there time for them to grow to size and then ripen? It's hard, I'm not going to lie to you guys, this is horrible, this stuff, but it's how it goes. Now, there's also some weirdness that happens with this plant. So I'm going to get rid of the foliage at the bottom, the same as I did with the rest, and these suckers. Okay, and then you'll get a better view of what's going on once I've done this. So that lets light get in here and here. But do you see this leaf? Barry's Crazy Cherry are one of those ones that the trusses of fruit grow branches out of them. So you've got to really get in there and look. See what I mean? And if you don't get that quickly, it turns into a full-size branch. So let me see if I can find you one. There we go. Kate, can you get the camera in on this monstrosity? Let me know when you can see.
Yeah, there.
So, truss of fruit. Oh look, it's grown another branch with another truss. Same thing's happening here. Now, I don't want huge big branches, I want fruit, and at this point in the year there's no point in it producing more trusses. So let's just take that out there and there. Now guys, be careful doing this because you don't want to cut your tomatoes off. Okay, so there's a starter, and we're just going to get up the plant like we did before. So anything that I can do to help the light get to this fruit. So see here, truss, lots and lots of tomatoes and flowers. Oh look, another branch. So having a good look. So yeah, sometimes it can be really hard to work out what is going on with Barry's. Madness, madness.
Crazy.
Crazy. I just thought I better say something different from crazy. Right, okay. I think that's it for this part of the plant. It's all the way up to the roof. And look at the size of the flower trusses. So as I've been saying, chances of that giving me gorgeous ripe tomatoes, slim to none. So I have to make a decision. Right. Kate, if we get this much fruit, would you be happy? Or do you want me to go to here?
You're in charge of tomatoes, it's up to you.
You sure?
No. Uh-oh.
I mean, how hard is this? Just look at all those potential little tomato baby goodness. But unfortunately, not in Scotland in August. Okay, we've shortened the plant. I mean, the plant still has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trusses of fruit technically. So I'm taking this off. So, you know, it's still a lot. It's a lot for the plant to cope with, to deal with, to grow. There we go. Okay. Now, fabulous camera lady, I don't know if you're going to manage this. Luffy schwa. We may have to sacrifice getting main shot. Luffy schwa, you can see, is the same type of plant as Barry's Crazy Cherry. So yes, they're indeterminates, but it's called multiflora. So it's the same trusses full of lots and lots and lots and lots of potential tomatoes. Lots of these flowers. The fruit on this is slightly bigger than Barry's. Barry's Crazy Cherry is much smaller. These are bigger. And this one gives me these orange, kind of with stripes of dark orange, kind of plum-like tomatoes. This is the plant that has given us ripe fruit so far. But I have to do the same thing. I'm going to have to go through, tidy up all of this because it's blocking the light, it's blocking airflow, and decide where I'm going to shorten the plant to. So, okay, we have stopped places and I'm still not even certain you'll be able to see properly. Kate's now in the...
Really hot end of the greenhouse.
Sorry, I thought our gate opened there. Kate's now in deepest, the hottest hell, and
Yes.
I've got the breeze. This is nice. Okay, right. So the main thing here for me is we have all these trusses of fruit, and you can see it's that same thing where it's grown branches out of the ends of the trusses. So I'm going to definitely, all of these are going. So I'm going to take it. Just be careful, folks. Okay. Now the idea is I'm wanting to create air and light as much as I can around here, but just be very careful. Right, so that's, oh, God, these are heavy. Can you get a good shot? That entire thing there is one truss. How crazy is this? Crazier than Barry. Okay, so that one I'm happy, I think. Coming round here, I can see there's lots of... I'm just taking them a little bit at a time because I can't really see, and I do not want to cut off a truss of fruit. I would cry, folks. There's one there. Boy, would I cry. Right. Right, I think that's what I can do for that bit. The only other branch I might take is this one. Again, just so that I can go there. I'm not going to take any of the rest of this general foliage, but I'm going to top the plant. So I'd be quite happy with this lot, don't you think? Mm-hmm. So if we take it here, there we go. Now, Luffy Schwa is a new one for us. This is the first year with it. I have found it's got way less foliage than the other tomato plants. So even though I only took a little bit off there, you can see that there's actually, it's mostly flowers and fruit. There's very little foliage. And it's been like this all the way, but you can see it's perfectly healthy, it's doing well. So that is my 4 tomato plants in the greenhouse, my now 3 tomato plants in the raised bed. I've got tomatoes in one more place, and I've left it to last because it seems to be doing the best. So I'm going to take you out. Outdoor tomatoes in the green stock because it's a different variety. Now I am going to bring you in close because I've only got tomatoes on this level, but long shot for just now so that you can see these are tomato plants growing right next to the raised bed. So in the same environment, but they are doing so much better. And there's a reason for that. So I'm going to bring you in and we're going to do a little bit of tidying up here, and we're going to do it in a different way because it's a different type of plant, and that is why it's doing so well. So yes, there is a lot growing here. So I've got peas and beans and tender stem broccoli and my tomatoes and my strawberries. That's what these things are for. So, but the plants in the green stock are all dwarf tomato plants. Now, a lot of my tomato plants, I got the seeds from Camilla, who is Camilla's Country Living, if you want to go and look for her on Instagram. Fantastic Instagram account. The woman is the Tomato Whisperer, but she lives way up north in the coldest part of Scotland, and she has so much success with tomatoes that she is actually my main tomato seed provider. She sells seeds, you can buy seeds from her, and she does all of the wonderful and wacky varieties, but she grows all of those fruit in her garden. So when she tells me something will do well for me, I know it's coming from an expert who knows my environment. Rather than me buying a lot of seeds like the Barry's Crazy Cherry, I bought those from a US supplier in the hope they would do well. Camilla now sells those seeds. She's had success with them, so have I, so excellent. But I did previous videos where I spoke about choosing your tomato plants for your garden, and I spoke about how for me in Scotland, I want plants that have short seasons because I have a short season. And all of these dwarf plants are exactly that, and Camilla chose these for me especially. All of the plants you're seeing have less than 60-day seasons. So I have had fruit from these plants. Now, I got fruit from these ones the day after the Luffy Schwa in the greenhouse. Considering these are outdoors, that is outstanding. And as you can see, there are a lot of sauve tomatoes here that are at breaking point, which means they've started to turn. So I can take these off the plant and ripen them indoors if I want. So if you have problems with birds and pests, that's an idea for you. But what I'm going to do in terms of pruning out here is very different, because I'm not trying to restrict the growth of these plants, because these plants are very much further on in the growing cycle. So I know I'm going to get ripe fruit from these now. All I'm doing with these ones is I'm tidying up. I'm taking off any bits of dead foliage, any dying leaves, and it gives me a chance to look and watch for blight, which is, if you're in the UK, it's a big deal for us. Blight happens when you have damp or wet, slightly warm situations, because it is the perfect place for blight to grow. It lands on the damp, wet leaves and it takes hold and it will kill your plant. Now, we lost everything to blight everything that was outdoors to blight quite late on last year, but we'd already had a really astonishing harvest, so it wasn't the end of the world. But once you have it, it spreads. So you need to keep an eye out. So that's all I'm doing here, is tidying up any leaves that don't look good or coming off, and I'm just watching and looking for signs of blight, which luckily I don't see yet, which is hurrah. So that's all we're doing out here. Now, unfortunately, the beans have grown into the tomatoes, and so have the peas. So I'm having to move things around to get a good look. So it's a very different thing. Very short season plants, so they are now really producing, so I don't have the worry of these. Plants in the greenhouse have had that boost to their season because obviously it's warmer in the greenhouse. So they will ripen first and probably produce more than the plants that are in a raised bed, because indeterminate plants, quite big plants, quite large fruit. These plants have a slightly longer growing season. So again, you balance what you're growing. But that's it. That's all there is to the pruning. So if you are in a shorter, colder summer like me, you can think about topping the plant at a certain point. For outdoors, usually it's 4 to 5 trusses. For in a greenhouse, 5 to 6 trusses. But you can make a judgment call. And at this time of year, the pruning is about making sure the light and the air gets into those fruits to help them ripen. That's it. Okay. Filthy now. What's next? Probably peppers, and I've got a blackberry bush that I'm going to propagate from. But that is for another video. See you, folks.